3 months after the humans arrived, the Valkyrie fleet prepared for something that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. They were going home. The wormhole generator sat in the center of a specially modified cargo bay on the Eternal Dawn. It had grown from a small prototype into a massive device combining the best of both species' technology. Crystalline Valkyrie quantum field generators wrapped around powerful human fusion cores. Cooling systems borrowed from human engineering kept the temperature stable. Control systems used Valkyrie precision combined with human redundancy. Soman and Yunji stood before their creation, exhausted but triumphant. They had worked almost nonstop for weeks, testing and refining, building and rebuilding. The device had failed 12 times during testing. Each failure had taught them something new. Each lesson had made the design stronger. "The calculations are solid now," Soman said, reviewing the data one more time. "The wormhole should be stable enough for the entire fleet to pass through. It will stay open for approximately 40 minutes. That should be enough time." Yunji nodded, but her expression was worried. "Should be enough time. But if something goes wrong, if ships get caught in the collapse, then we die," Soman finished. "But we were dying 3 months ago. At least now we're dying while trying to get home. That's better than waiting for the end in the darkness." Yunji smiled at that. "You're starting to think like a human." "Maybe I am," Soman admitted. "You've taught me to be reckless in pursuit of the impossible." In the medical bay, Dr. Isul conducted final health checks on the Valkyrie population. 3 months of human food and medicine had restored most people to good health. The children were energetic and happy. The elderly had regained their will to live. Even the chronically ill were stable. Yuna worked beside her, checking the medical supplies that would sustain the Valkyrie during their journey home. The humans had given them enough to last for months. Medicine, equipment, even training for Valkyrie medical staff on human emergency procedures. "I'm going to miss working with you," Isul said quietly. Yuna looked up, surprised. "Miss me? I'm coming with you. The Indomitable is escorting your fleet all the way home, remember?" "I know," Isul said. "But after that you'll leave. You'll go back to human space and I'll never see you again. The galaxy is too big. The distance is too vast." Yuna put down her datapad and took Isul's hands. "Listen to me. The Valkyrie and humans are connected now. This isn't goodbye. This is the beginning of something bigger. Our species will see each other again. We'll trade. We'll visit. We'll share knowledge and culture. This isn't an ending." Isul wanted to believe that. She wanted to think that the friendship between their species would survive the distance and time. But the galaxy was cruel. She had learned that lesson when the Ravagers came. Yuna seemed to read her thoughts. "The Ravagers taught you that the galaxy is full of monsters. But we're teaching you something different. The galaxy is also full of friends. You just have to find them." Captain Nari stood on the bridge of the Silent Promise, watching her crew prepare the ship for the journey through the wormhole. Her vessel had been dying 3 months ago, barely functional. Now it ran on hybrid human Valkyrie power systems. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Junho appeared on her communication screen, calling from the human supply ship that had been supporting her vessel. "All cargo transferred. All systems green. You're ready to go." "Thank you, Junho," Nari said sincerely. "For everything. You saved my ship. You saved my crew," Junho grinned. "Just doing my job. Besides, your crew did most of the work. We just provided the tools and showed you some human stubbornness." "Human stubbornness," Nari repeated with a smile. "I think that's the secret to your success. You refuse to accept failure." "Pretty much," Junho agreed. "Failure is just success that hasn't happened yet. That's what my father used to say." Nari felt a pang of sadness. She had grown close to this human over the past months. He had become a friend. After today, she might never see him again. "Will you visit us? After we reach the colony worlds? Will humans come to see us?" "Are you kidding?" Junho laughed. "Of course we will. Humans are curious. We explore. We make friends. We'll visit so often you'll get sick of seeing us." Engineer Day worked in the reactor room with Lieutenant Minho, conducting final checks on the hybrid power systems. The human engineer had become like a brother to him over the past months. They had worked together, argued together, solved impossible problems together. "The quantum drives are functioning at 70% capacity," Day reported. "Not perfect, but stable. The human fusion cores are providing the extra power we need for the jump." Minho nodded, satisfied. 70% is good enough. You don't need perfect. You just need functional. That's the human way. Day smiled at that. The human way. I think I prefer it to the Valkyrie way now. We spent so long pursuing perfection that we forgot how to adapt. You humans taught us that good enough is sometimes better than perfect. Just don't tell our engineers I said that, Minho joked. They'll accuse me of lowering standards. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, checking systems and making minor adjustments. Finally, Day stopped and looked at his friend. Minho, will you remember us? After you go back to human space? Will you tell people about the Valkyrie? Minho looked surprised. Are you serious? Day, this is the biggest thing to happen to humanity in decades. We found an advanced alien civilization in need. We helped them. We made friends across the stars. Of course we'll remember. This is history. You're heroes to us. We're not heroes, Day protested. We're just survivors. Same thing, Minho replied. Surviving takes courage. Never giving up takes strength. You're heroes whether you admit it or not. Commander Hyun stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn with Commander Park beside her. They watched the wormhole generator power up, energy readings climbing steadily. The device hummed with building power, a sound that vibrated through the deck plates. Last chance to back out, Park said with a slight smile. We could keep drifting around out here. See what else the galaxy has to offer. Hyun laughed. Tempting, but no. My people deserve to go home. They deserve to rebuild, to create a new future. What will you do? Park asked. After you reach the colony worlds. After you rebuild? Hyun thought about that question. 3 months ago, she had been focused purely on survival. She hadn't let herself think about the future beyond the next day. But now, with hope restored, she could imagine possibilities. We'll rebuild our civilization, she said. Not the same as before. Something new. Something better. We'll remember what the Ravagers taught us about the cruelty of the universe. But we'll also remember what humans taught us about the kindness of strangers. Park nodded approvingly. And you'll be ready if the Ravagers come again? Yes, Hyun said firmly. We'll be ready. We'll never be caught unprepared again. But we'll also be ready to help others the way you helped us. We'll be the humans of our region of space. The ones who answer distress calls. The ones who help strangers. The galaxy needs more species like that, Park observed. Sensor Officer Tay called out from his station. Commander, the wormhole generator is at full power. We're ready to activate. This was the moment. The point of no return. If the device failed, if the wormhole collapsed, everyone would die. But if they didn't try, they would remain stranded forever, dependent on human charity, never seeing their home again. Hyun looked at Park. Will you come through with us? I know you promised to escort us, but you don't have to risk your ships on untested technology. Park smiled. We started this together. We finish it together. Besides, someone needs to make sure you get there safely. Can't trust you, Valkyrie, to do anything the simple way. Hyun felt warmth flood through her. These humans, these wonderful, stubborn, impossible humans, they had saved her people. They had restored hope, and now they would see the mission through to the very end regardless of the risk. Activate the wormhole generator, Hyun ordered. The device roared to life. Energy cascaded through the quantum field generators. The fusion cores blazed with power. Space itself began to tear, reality peeling back to reveal something beyond. A hole opened in the fabric of the universe, swirling with colors that shouldn't exist, showing glimpses of somewhere else. Tay's voice shook with excitement. Wormhole stable. Destination confirmed. It's Valkyrie colonial space. The gateway is open! Cheers erupted across the bridge. The other Valkyrie ships reported similar reactions. After 3 months of desperate hope, it was real. The way home was open before them. Hyun gave the order she had dreamed of giving. All ships begin transit. The Eternal Dawn will go last to ensure everyone makes it through safely. One by one, the Valkyrie ships entered the wormhole. Captain Nari's silent promise went first, plunging into the swirling gateway and disappearing from normal space. Other ships followed. Transport vessels carrying families and children, cargo ships loaded with supplies, escort vessels providing protection. The human ships moved into position around the remaining Valkyrie vessels, ready to help if anything went wrong. Commander Park had stationed his ships to act as guards, willing to sacrifice themselves to save the refugees if the wormhole became unstable. Minutes passed like hours. Ship after ship entered the gateway and disappeared. The wormhole held stable. the generator performing exactly as designed. 3 weeks after the humans arrived, the Valkyrie fleet had transformed. The ship still bore scars from their emergency jump and the long drift through space, but they were alive. Power flowed through their systems. People moved through corridors with purpose instead of despair. Children laughed again. Somin worked late in the research lab she shared with Unji. The human astrophysicist had taken over half the space with her equipment, strange devices that hummed and beeped at odd intervals. Right now, Yunji was swearing at a holographic display showing complex mathematical models. "This should work," Yunji muttered. "The theory is sound. The calculations are correct. Why won't the simulation stabilize?" Somin looked at the data from a different angle. "You're approaching it from a human perspective. Linear thinking. But quantum space doesn't work that way. It's fluid, flexible. You have to think like water, not like stone." Yunji stared at her. "Think like water. That's the most Valkyrie thing I've ever heard. But you know what? I think you're right." She modified the simulation parameters, adjusting them based on Somin's suggestion. The model ran again. This time it held stable. "Yes," Yunji shouted, jumping up and hugging Somin. "You're a genius. We did it! The wormhole generator should work!" The prototype sat on the workbench, looking like something cobbled together from spare parts. It combined Valkyrie quantum field generators with human power systems, elegant crystalline structures wrapped around chunky fusion cores. It shouldn't work. By all known physics, the technologies were incompatible, but they had built it anyway. And now, according to the simulations, it would work. "We need to test it," Somin said, feeling excitement and fear in equal measure. "Small scale first. Create a miniature wormhole. See if it's stable." Yunji was already preparing the test equipment. "If this works, we can scale it up. Build a wormhole big enough for your entire fleet to pass through. Send you home to Valkyrie colonial space." Home. The word carried so much weight. Somin thought about the colony worlds, those distant settlements that might still survive beyond Ravager space. She thought about rebuilding, starting over, creating a new future for her people, but she also thought about the humans. These strange, stubborn people who had saved them. Would they just say goodbye and never see each other again? The thought made her sad. In the medical bay, Dr. Isol had become close friends with Yuna. They worked together so naturally now that it was hard to remember they came from different species. Yuna taught Isol human medical techniques. Isol showed Yuna the principles behind Valkyrie nanotechnology. A young Valkyrie girl named Hana sat on an examination table, swinging her legs and watching the doctors work. She had been near death when the humans arrived. Now she was healthy, energetic, and completely fascinated by the human crew. "Dr. Yuna," Hana asked, "why don't humans have long lives like Valkyrie?" Yuna smiled gently. "Humans usually live about 80 to 90 years. Some live longer. I know that's short compared to your species." "You live, what, 200 years? My grandmother lived for 240 years, Hana said proudly. "She died when the Ravagers came." The girl's expression grew sad. Yuna sat down beside her, putting an arm around the small shoulders. "I'm sorry you lost your grandmother. But you know what? Length of life isn't as important as quality of life. Humans believe that what matters is how you live, not how long you live. We try to make every day count." Isol watched the interaction and felt her heart warm. The humans had such a different perspective on existence. They knew their lives were short, so they lived with urgency and passion. They didn't waste time on meaningless things. They focused on what mattered. Helping others, building connections, making a difference. Captain Nari spent most of her time working with Junho, planning the logistics of moving the fleet. They had become an effective team despite their very different approaches to problem solving. Nari liked to plan everything carefully, analyzing every detail. Junho preferred to dive in and figure things out as he went. "The supply situation is stable now," Junho reported, reviewing inventory on his datapad. "We have enough food, water, and medicine for your fleet to sustain itself for months. The human ships can resupply you as needed until we get you home." Nari studied the numbers. "Your people have given us so much. Food from your own stores, medicine, equipment. How will you resupply yourselves?" Junho shrugged. "We'll manage. The human expeditionary navy is small, but we're resourceful. We knew this mission might take time and resources. We planned for it. But you couldn't have planned for finding 12,000 refugees who needed everything." Nari protested. "No," Junho admitted. "But that's okay. Sometimes you have to adapt, make sacrifices. Do what needs to be done. He grinned. Besides, helping people is what we do. It's kind of our thing. Nari found herself smiling. Humans had such a casual approach to heroism. They saved lives and changed the course of history, then acted like it was no big deal, like it was just another day at work. In the communal areas of the ships, Valkyrie and human children played together. They had overcome language barriers through the universal translator, but more importantly through games and laughter. Children always found ways to communicate. A Valkyrie boy named Taeyang taught human children a traditional Valkyrie game involving pattern recognition and quick reflexes. The human kids picked it up quickly, their young minds adapting easily. In return, they taught him human games involving physical activity and teamwork. The elderly Valkyrie sat in groups, listening to human crew members tell stories. The humans spoke about Earth, about their history, their struggles and triumphs. They told of wars and peace, of disasters and rebuilding. They shared their art, their music, their philosophy. An old Valkyrie woman named Minji listened to these stories with tears in her eyes. "Your people have suffered so much," she said to a young human soldier named Jay. "Wars, disease, natural disasters. How do you remain so optimistic?" Jay thought about the question carefully. "Because we've learned that suffering is temporary, but hope is permanent. Every time humanity has been knocked down, we've gotten back up. Every time we've faced extinction, we've found a way to survive. We're stubborn like that." Minji touched his hand gently. "The Valkyrie were optimistic once. We believed in a better future. Then the Ravagers came and destroyed everything. We lost our hope. But you're still here," Jay pointed out. "You survived. You escaped. You kept going even when everything seemed lost. That's not lack of hope. That's incredible strength." Minji smiled through her tears. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we haven't lost hope. We just forgot where we put it. You humans reminded us." Commander Hyun held regular meetings with Commander Park, coordinating the efforts to repair and restore the Valkyrie fleet. The meetings had become more than just professional discussions. They had become conversations between friends. "The wormhole generator is almost ready," Hyun reported. "Selman and Yoonji believe they can create a stable gateway to Valkyrie colonial space. If they're correct, we could be home within weeks." Park nodded, looking pleased. "That's excellent news. Your people deserve to go home. Wise, what about your people?" Hyun asked. "You've traveled so far from human space. When will you return?" "After we see you safely home," Park said simply. "We started this mission. We'll finish it." Hyun studied his face. "You don't have to escort us all the way. You've already done more than enough." "Humans see things through to the end," Park replied. "We don't start a job and leave it half finished. Besides, we want to see your colonial space. Make sure you're really safe before we leave." "You're worried the Ravagers might be there," Hyun said quietly. Park didn't deny it. "Yes, if they are, you'll need help. We're not much compared to them, but we're better than nothing." Hyun felt emotion well up in her chest. These humans, with their primitive ships and simple technology, were willing to face the Ravagers to protect the Valkyrie. They had no obligation, no reason to risk themselves, but they would do it anyway because that's who they were. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything. For saving us. For staying with us. For giving us hope again," Park smiled. "Thank you for letting us help. Humanity is young. We're still figuring out our place in the galaxy. Meeting you, seeing your culture, learning from your people, this has been incredible for us. You've taught us so much." That evening, the combined fleet held a celebration. Valkyrie and humans gathered in the largest cargo bay of the Eternal Dawn, converted into a temporary social space. Food was shared. Music played, a strange mixture of Valkyrie harmonic compositions and human rhythmic melodies. People danced, laughed, told stories. Young Hana ran through the crowd with her new human friends, playing games and causing harmless chaos. Old Minji sat with human crew members, discussing philosophy and the nature of hope. Soman and Yoonji argued about quantum mechanics while drinking something Yoonji called coffee. Nari and Junho planned logistics while sampling Valkyrie cuisine. Hyun and Park stood at the edge of the gathering, watching their people come together. Two species that should never have met. Two civilizations at completely different stages of development. Yet here they were, united by shared experience and mutual respect. "We're not just allies anymore," Hyun observed. "We're family," Park nodded. "Family helps each other. No matter what. No matter the cost." The humans worked like nothing Hyun had ever seen before. They moved through the dying Valkyrie ships with organized chaos, solving problems with solutions that seemed impossible. Lieutenant Minho kept his promise. Within 2 days, every ship in the fleet had auxiliary power. The lights came back on. Heat returned. Life support systems hummed to life. Captain Ji-Wan of the escort vessel. Silent Promise walked through her ship in amazement. Human engineers had attached crude but functional generators to her failing reactor. Thick cables ran through corridors like mechanical vines. The generators made noise and vibrated the deck plates, but they worked. Her ship was alive again. She watched a human engineer named Junho working on a power junction. He was singing something in his native language, some kind of working song. When the junction sparked and shocked him, he cursed loudly, shook his hand, then laughed and went back to work. The Valkyrie engineers who worked with him seemed bewildered by this approach, but they couldn't argue with results. On the Eternal Dawn, Commander Hyun met with the human fleet commander through holographic transmission. Commander Park appeared as a 3-dimensional image in the conference room. He was younger than Hyun had expected, maybe equivalent to 30 Valkyrie years. He had an easy smile and confident manner that seemed at odds with the desperate situation. "Your people are stable now," Park said, reviewing data on a tablet device. "We've distributed food and medical supplies across all 47 ships. Dr. Yuna reports that most of your critical patients are recovering. The children are doing better. The elderly have stopped dying." Hyun felt tears threaten but held them back. "Commander Park, we cannot thank you enough. You saved us, all of us. We were dying and you came from nowhere to help." "Why?" Park looked surprised by the question. "Because you needed help. That's reason enough, isn't it?" "Most civilized species don't see it that way," Hyun said quietly. "When the Ravagers came to our homeworld, we called our allies for help. Nobody came. Everyone ran to save themselves. We burned alone." Park's expression hardened. "Then your allies were cowards. Humanity might be young and primitive by your standards, but we understand some basic truths. When someone calls for help, you answer. When someone is dying, you save them. It's not complicated." Hyun studied this young human commander. His species used fusion drives that the Valkyrie had abandoned millennia ago. His ships were ugly and inefficient. His weapons were kinetic projectiles instead of energy beams. By every measure, humanity should be irrelevant on the galactic stage. But they had come. When nobody else had, when nobody else would. In the medical bay, Dr. Isul worked alongside Human Medical Officer Yuna. The human woman was shorter than Isul, with a round face and gentle hands. She moved between Valkyrie patients with easy confidence, treating injuries and illnesses with simple but effective methods. Yuna examined a young Valkyrie child who had been near death from malnutrition. The child was eating now, slowly regaining strength. Yuna checked vital signs using a handheld scanner that looked ancient compared to Valkyrie medical equipment. "Your technology is so different from ours," Isul observed. "We use nanobots for healing, genetic manipulation for disease, energy fields for surgery. You use duct tape and prayers," Yuna finished with a grin. "That's what we call it. Duct tape and prayers. We make do with what we have. Sometimes the simple way is the best way." Isul watched Yuna work on another patient, an elderly Valkyrie man who had refused treatment days ago. Yuna talked to him gently, explaining each step of her care. She held his hand. She made him laugh. The old man began accepting food again. "You're good at this," Isul said softly. "Not just the medicine, the care, the compassion." Yuna shrugged. "Humans believe that healing is about more than just fixing the body. You have to fix the spirit too. This man was dying because he had given up hope. Now he has hope again. That's more powerful than any medicine." In the reactor chambers, Engineer Day worked with Human Chief Engineer Minho on the quantum drive systems. Minho stood in front of the massive crystalline cores, scratching his head and frowning. "I have no idea how these work," Minho admitted cheerfully. "Quantum mechanics makes my head hurt. But I understand energy. I understand reactors. I understand making dead things work again." "The cores are burned out," Dee explained. "They require resources we don't have to repair. We'd need to return to Valkyrie space to get replacement parts." Minho walked around the cores, examining them from different angles. "What if we don't repair them? What if we rebuild them using hybrid technology? Human fusion cores for raw power, connected to your quantum field generators for faster-than-light capability." Dai stared at him. That's what impossible. The technologies are incompatible. Everything is compatible if you're creative enough, Minho said with a grin. My grandfather used to fix ancient combustion engines using parts from broken refrigerators. Same principle. Make it work with what you have. Over the following days, something remarkable happened. The two species began to understand each other. Human engineers learned Valkyrie technology. Valkyrie scientists studied human solutions. Children from both species played together in the corridors. Elderly Valkyrie listened to human stories with fascination. A young Valkyrie scientist named Somin found herself assigned to work with human astrophysicist Yunji. The human woman was brilliant and completely insane in equal measure. She had theories about everything, most of them impossible, all of them interesting. Look at this, Yunji said, pulling up holographic displays of mathematical equations. Your quantum drives create small wormholes for travel. But what if we scaled up the technology? What if we created a stable wormhole big enough for your entire fleet to pass through? We could send you home, back to Valkyrie colonial space. Somin studied the equations. This is reckless. The power requirements alone would be enormous. And if the wormhole collapsed while ships were passing through, then we'd all die horribly. Yunji finished. But you're dying anyway if you stay here. At least this way you die trying to get home. Somin found herself laughing despite the morbid logic. You humans are crazy. Probably, Yunji agreed. But crazy sometimes works. Let's build a prototype. Small scale. See if the theory holds. They worked together for hours, combining Valkyrie quantum technology with human determination. The prototype took shape slowly, a hybrid device that looked like nothing either species had built before. It was elegant Valkyrie design mixed with chunky human engineering. It was beautiful and ugly at the same time. Captain Nari learned to appreciate human stubbornness when working with human. Logistics officer Junho Shi had explained to him multiple times that the refugee ships couldn't be towed to human space. They were too massive. The human ships weren't strong enough. It was impossible. Junho refused to accept this. Then we build bigger engines, he said simply. You can't just build bigger engines, Nari argued. Sure we can. Watch. Within a week, human engineers had constructed massive external drive units that attached to the Valkyrie ships. They were ugly things, all exposed machinery and brute force, but they provided thrust. Uno tested them personally, taking a refugee ship on a short flight around the fleet. It worked. Impossible just means nobody tried hard enough yet, Junho explained to the stunned Nari. Cultural exchange happened naturally. Valkyrie children learned human games, strange activities involving balls and running and laughter. Human crew members attended Valkyrie remembrance ceremonies, standing in silence as the refugees mourned their lost homeworld. The humans cried alongside the Valkyrie, sharing their grief even though they had never seen the world that burned. The humans shared stories of Earth, their distant homeworld. They showed images of blue oceans and green continents, cities of metal and glass, art and music and literature spanning thousands of years. The Valkyrie realized that humanity was young by galactic standards, but they were not primitive in the ways that mattered. They understood loss. They understood survival. They understood the refusal to give up. One evening, Commander Hyun and Commander Park stood together on the observation deck of the Indomitable. They looked out at the combined fleet, human and Valkyrie ships working together. Your people saved us, Hyun said quietly. We were dying and you came from impossibly far away to help. I still don't understand why. Park was quiet for a moment. 30 years ago, humanity achieved faster-than-light travel. We started exploring the galaxy. We knew we were young compared to other civilizations, primitive, weak. But we also knew we were alone out here. When we heard your distress call, we had a choice. Ignore it and stay safe, or answer it and risk everything. Most species would choose safety, Hyun observed. Most species aren't human, Park replied. We're stubborn. We're optimistic. We believe in helping people because it's the right thing to do. Maybe that makes us naive. Maybe it makes us stupid, but it also makes us human. Hyun looked at the human commander with new understanding. Humanity was young, yes. They had primitive technology and simple solutions. But they had something more valuable than advanced science. They had compassion. They had courage. They had hope. And right now that was worth more than all the quantum technology in the galaxy. 6 days passed like a slow nightmare. Hyun watched her people die slowly one by one. The elderly went first as they had chosen, then the sick. The children cried less now, too weak from hunger to make much noise. The ships grew colder as power failed. The darkness seemed to press in from all sides. On the 6th day, Hyun sat in her command chair, staring at nothing. She had stopped sleeping. There seemed no point anymore. Better to spend her final hours awake, aware, present for her people, even if she could do nothing to save them. Sensor Officer Tae sat at his station like always, monitoring the empty space around them. Hyun had told him days ago that he could stop. The sensors were useless now. Nobody was coming. But Tae had refused. He said he wanted to be at his post when the end came. Hyun understood. They all needed something to hold on to. Then every alarm on the bridge started screaming at once. Tae jerked upright in his seat, his hands flying across his console. "Commander! Multiple contacts. Ships emerging from faster-than-light travel." Hyun's heart stopped. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Then ice flooded her veins. The Ravagers? Unknown. They're coming directly toward us. Tae's voice rose with panic. "Contact in 5 minutes." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers ran to their stations. Commander Hyun stood, her mind racing. The Ravagers had found them. After everything they had survived, after all their running, the monsters had tracked them down. They would die here, light years from anywhere, and nobody would ever know what happened to the last Valkyrie. "All ships, battle stations," Hyun ordered through the fleet-wide communication system. "Charge all weapons. Prepare for combat." But even as she gave the orders, she knew it was useless. They barely had enough power for life support. Their weapons would fire maybe once, twice if they were lucky. The Ravagers would tear through them like paper. Captain Nari's face appeared on the screen, pale and determined. "Hyun, my weapons are offline. We have no power. What do we do?" "Ram them if you have to," Hyun said grimly. "We don't die quietly," Engineer Day called from the reactor room. "Commander, if I redirect all remaining power to weapons, we'll lose life support." "Do it," Hyun ordered. "If we're dying anyway, we die fighting." The ships appeared on the tactical display. 12 vessels, large, moving in a defensive formation. Hyun watched them approach, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. This was it, the end. She wondered if death would be quick, but something felt wrong. Lieutenant Bora stared at her console with confusion on her face. "Commander, the signatures don't match Ravager bioships. These are different. The propulsion systems aren't in our database." "What do you mean?" Hyun moved to Bora's station, looking at the data streaming across the screen. "They're using fusion drives, fission reactors, kinetic weapons. This technology is..." Bora's voice trailed off in disbelief. "This technology is primitive, ancient. We used systems like this thousands of years ago." Hyun stared at the data. Primitive ships? Out here in uncharted space? It made no sense. Who would travel this far from civilization with such outdated technology? The ships moved closer. They were ugly things, Hyun thought. Bulky and inelegant compared to the smooth organic curves of Valkyrie design. But they were functional, powerful, and very much operational, unlike her own dying fleet. Tae looked up from his console. "Commander, we're receiving a communication signal." "Put it through," Hyun said. Static filled the bridge speakers. The universal translation matrix struggled with the alien language, producing garbled sounds and broken words. Then slowly the system found patterns and began translating. "This is the UESS Indomitable of the Human Expeditionary Navy. We received your distress call. Are you in need of assistance?" Silence fell across the bridge. Every officer stared at the speakers as if they had just heard a ghost. "Speak humans." Hyun searched her memory. For any reference to this species, nothing. The Valkyrie databases contained information about hundreds of civilized species, but humans weren't among them. Either they were so primitive they had never achieved space travel, or they came from so far away that the Valkyrie had never encountered them. But they were here. Impossible as it seemed, they had received the distress beacon and come to help. Hyun realized she was trembling. She cleared her throat and activated the communication system. "This is Commander Hyun of the Valkyrie Expeditionary Fleet. We are stranded. Our drives have failed. We have 12,000 people running out of time. We need immediate assistance," the response came quickly. "Understood, Commander Hyun. We're sending rescue teams and supply ships." "Hold on, help is here, help is here." Those 3 words hit Hyun like a physical blow. She sat down hard in her command chair, her legs suddenly weak. Around her, the bridge crew began to cry. Some openly wept, others simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what was happening. Captain Nari called from the silent promise. Tears streamed down her face. "Hyun, did you hear that? Did they just say help is coming?" "Yes," Hyun whispered. "I think they did." The 12 human ships moved into position around the Velkari fleet. They were smaller than the Velkari vessels, but somehow more solid, as if they had been built to endure rather than to impress. Hyun watched them on the tactical display. These strange ships from an unknown species, and felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. More communications came through. The human commander identified himself as Park. His voice sounded young but confident. He began asking questions about their situation. How many ships? How many people? What resources did they need? What was the status of their power systems? Hyun answered each question carefully, laying out the desperate reality of their situation. They were dying. They had days, maybe hours for some ships. They needed everything: food, water, medicine, power. They needed miracles. Commander Park listened to everything she said. Then he spoke in that same confident voice. "We can work with this. Give us a few hours to organize. We'll get your people stable, then figure out long-term solutions." A few hours. Hyun almost laughed. They had been drifting here for 6 days in despair, and this human said he needed a few hours. The first human shuttle arrived within 20 minutes. It docked with the Eternal Dawn using mechanical clamps that seemed crude but effective. The airlock cycled open, and 3 humans in pressure suits stepped onto the Velkari ship. They were shorter than the Velkari, bulkier in build. Through their helmet visors, Hyun could see their faces. They looked similar to Velkari in basic structure, but different in details: darker skin tones, different eye shapes, shorter lifespans, Hyun guessed from their biological readings. The lead human removed his helmet. He had a kind face, young but weathered by experience. He looked around the dark bridge, taking in the failing systems and exhausted crew. Then he smiled. "Hello," he said through the translation system. "I'm Lieutenant Minho, Chief Engineer. Let's get your power back online." Just like that. As if it were simple. As if they hadn't been dying for 6 days. More shuttles arrived. Human medics carrying supplies. Human engineers with equipment. Human soldiers providing security. They moved through the Velkari ships like a force of nature, working quickly and efficiently. They shouted to each other over open channels, sometimes arguing about solutions, sometimes laughing at impossible situations. Dr. Isul contacted the bridge. Her voice shook with emotion. "Hyun, the humans brought food. Real food and medicine. They're treating our sick right now. The children are eating. The elderly are receiving care. I don't understand. Why are they helping us?" Hyun didn't have an answer. She watched through the security feeds as human medics worked alongside Velkari doctors. The humans used simple but effective techniques. Where Velkari medicine relied on advanced nanotechnology, the humans used what one medic cheerfully called basic care. But it worked. People who had been dying started to stabilize. Engineer Day appeared on the bridge with Lieutenant Minho. Both of them looked exhausted but excited. Minho was explaining something using hand gestures and simple diagrams. "Commander," Day said, "Lieutenant Minho has a plan to restore auxiliary power. It's not elegant, and it uses human technology we don't fully understand. But I think it will work." Minho nodded enthusiastically. "Your quantum cores are amazing, but they're dead. So we bypass them. We use our fusion generators instead. They're primitive compared to your tech, but primitive is better than nothing, right?" Hyun looked at this young human engineer who spoke about impossible solutions as if they were everyday problems. "How long will it take?" "Give us 2 days," Minho said confidently. "We'll have every ship in your fleet running on auxiliary power. Won't be pretty, but you'll have heat, light, and life support." 2 days. After 6 days of slow death, this human promised salvation in 2 days. Hyun found herself believing him. The stars looked cold and distant through the viewport of the Eternal Dawn. Commander Hyun stood alone on the bridge, watching the darkness of space. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, tired and worn. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Nobody spoke unless they had to. There was nothing left to say. Hyun turned away from the viewport and looked at the tactical display in the center of the bridge. 47 ships appeared on the holographic screen, floating in the void like dead leaves on still water. Each one carried Velkari people who had escaped the destruction of their homeworld. 12,000 souls, 12,000 lives depending on decisions she could no longer make. 3 cycles ago, everything had been different. They had been running from the Ravagers, those terrible creatures that consumed entire worlds. The Velkari homeworld had fallen in fire and screams. Hyun had led the evacuation fleet through impossible odds, jumping through unstable wormholes to escape. They had made it out alive, but the emergency jump had broken something fundamental in their ships. The quantum drives, the advanced technology that let them travel faster than light, had failed. All of them. Every single ship in the fleet now drifted in uncharted space, light years from any known civilization. They had escaped death only to find it waiting for them in the empty darkness between stars. Engineer Day appeared on the bridge through the sliding doors. His uniform was stained with coolant fluid, and his hands shook slightly. Hyun knew what he would say before he opened his mouth. She had been receiving the same report for days now. "Commander," Day said quietly, "the main reactor is failing. I've tried everything. The crystalline cores are burned out. Even if I could repair them, we don't have the resources. We don't have the power." He paused, looking down at his hands. "I'm sorry," Hyun nodded slowly. "How long?" "For this ship? Maybe 10 more days. The smaller vessels in the fleet have less time. Some of them will lose life support within a week. A week. 7 days for some families to say goodbye. 7 days for children to ask questions their parents couldn't answer. 7 days before the cold of space crept into the ships and stole the warmth from their bodies." "Thank you, Day," Hyun said. "Keep working. Do what you can." Day nodded and left the bridge. Hyun knew he would go back to the reactor chambers and work until he collapsed. That's what they all did now. They worked because stopping meant accepting the truth. The communications officer, a young woman named Bora, looked up from her station. "Commander, the distress beacon is still broadcasting. Any response?" Hyun asked, though she already knew the answer. "No, Commander. Nothing." Hyun walked to the communication station and looked at the display. The beacon sent out a signal in all directions calling for help in every known language. It had been broadcasting for 3 days. The signal traveled at the speed of light, spreading through the darkness, reaching further and further into the unknown. But space was vast, empty. The chances of anyone hearing them were almost zero. Even if someone did hear, they wouldn't come. The Velkari had no allies left. Their coalition of civilized species had scattered when the Ravagers came. Everyone had run to save themselves. The Velkari homeworld had burned alone, and now the survivors would die alone. Dr. Isul contacted the bridge through the internal communication system. Her voice sounded tired. "Commander, I need to speak with you about the medical situation." "Go ahead, Doctor." "I'm rationing the remaining supplies, food, water, medicine. We have enough for maybe 2 weeks if everyone accepts smaller portions. The children will get priority, of course." "But Hyun," Isul's voice cracked slightly. "The elderly are already dying." "Not from hunger. From despair. They know what's happening. They're giving up." Hyun closed her eyes. The elderly Velkari, those who had lived through generations of peace and prosperity, now faced the extinction of their entire species. Many of them had already decided not to burden the younger generation with their presence. They refused food. They refused medicine. They simply waited for the end. "Do what you can, Isul," Hyun said softly. "Comfort them. Tell them we haven't given up." But they had given up. Everyone knew it. They just didn't say it out loud. Captain Nari called from the escort vessel Silent Promise. Her face appeared on the main screen, showing the same exhaustion that Hyun felt. Nari commanded one of the smaller ships, a vessel designed for quick strikes, not long-term survival. "Hyun, my ship is dying faster than the others. We have families here, children, they're scared. They ask me when we're going home and I don't know what to tell them." Hyun wanted to give Nari hope, to say something encouraging, but lies felt wrong. They had been through too much together for lies. "Tell them the truth, Nari. Tell them we're trying. Tell them we're not giving up." Nari's expression hardened. "And when that's not enough? When they start asking if we're going to die out here? Then tell them yes," Hyun said quietly. "Tell them we might die. But tell them we're still alive right now. Tell them to hold on." The communication ended. Hyun returned to the viewport and stared out at the stars. She thought about the Valkyrie homeworld, that beautiful planet of blue oceans and green continents. She remembered the cities, the art, the music, the literature. 10,000 years of civilization. All of it gone except for the memories carried in the minds of 12,000 refugees floating in the darkness. She thought about the Ravagers, those monsters that existed only to consume and destroy. They had come from deep space, from beyond the known galaxy. Nobody understood them. Nobody could communicate with them. They simply arrived, destroyed everything, and moved on. The Valkyrie had been one of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they had fallen in weeks. Sensor Officer Tay worked quietly at his station, monitoring the empty space around them. He had been watching the sensors for 3 days, hoping to see something, anything that might offer hope, but space remained empty, silent, indifferent to their suffering. Hyun wondered if this was truly the end. Not just of the fleet, but of the Valkyrie people. Would they simply vanish from the universe as if they had never existed? Would future civilizations find their dead ships floating in the void and wonder who they had been? She felt anger then, hot and sudden in her chest. They had survived the apocalypse of their homeworld. They had escaped the Ravagers. They had jumped through impossible distances to reach safety. And now they would die because of mechanical failure? Because their technology had broken at the worst possible moment? It felt wrong, unfair, cruel. But the universe didn't care about fairness. The stars shone with cold, distant light, and the darkness between them stretched on forever. Hyun stood alone on the bridge of a dying ship, watching the end approach with slow, terrible certainty. She stayed there until her shift ended, watching the stars, waiting for a miracle that would never come.